you need to opt out rather than opt in to this sort of thing. So you are currently fair game. I imagine that will not last very long, not least because I have seen instances of videos of Taylor Swift being deepfaked using this AI tool, and also images of Mario, the Super Mario video game character. And one thing that I know very well is that Nintendo, the company that runs the Super Mario franchise, are very, very protective of their intellectual property.
British factories have suffered the sharpest drop in production for 6 months, with the temporary shutdown of Jaguar Land Rover's factories adding to the issue. JLR says it's going to resume some production in the coming days after the cyber attack brought things to a halt. But what does it mean for the customer when a company you've used is victim to a cyber attack? We're going to talk about this with our resident tech journalist, Chris Stokel-Walker. Hello, Chris.
Hi, Fee.
Now, we had an email via our podcast. You can use the address janeandfee@times.radio that was directed specifically to you. It comes from Joanne the gardener. She says, please could you ask the lovely CSW what it means explicitly for private individuals when hacks are made on companies we've got an account with. We are forever being reassured that our details are safe when they so obviously aren't. Everything is forcing us towards a digital life, which is leaving many of us vulnerable because digital personal security training is either withheld, left out, too confusing to understand, or simply inadequate. Can he advise? Over to you.
I'm flattered that Joanne has asked me directly for this and very happy to help. I think that this is always bad when this happens, to be clear. I think that is a real risk. I think to reassure Joanne, there are some elements and steps that businesses put in place to try and ensure that some of the most secretive or the most important data that you would want to keep secure is not actually given over to hackers. So, for instance, they generally can't run rampant when, for instance, the Co-op was recently hit with a cyber attack. That affected, for instance, names, email addresses, and so on, but it didn't actually affect your credit card details. And when these companies are attacked, they will often go very quickly to say, actually, no card details were given over. And that is because they are encrypted when they are passed over through the online payment system. However, I do think that it is important that we have, as Joanne highlights, a bit of a conversation about the consequences that it can mean for you personally when any information, including your name or your email address, are hacked. So these generally go into a giant slush fund that is passed around cyber criminals, your name and your email address and any other personal information they can get, and it's often connected with other information that might have been released in a hack. So the Co-op incident or the M&S incident, or sometimes even the JLR incident, might be triangulated with, for instance, a Facebook hack or a yonks old MySpace hack or something like that. And the more that they can build up a picture of you, the more dangerous it is. In terms of what you should do, I think that you should just be very cautious around any sort of emails that you get purporting to be from organizations, purporting to pretend to be legitimate in the immediate weeks and months after these attacks, because that is when the hackers tend to try and target you the most. So skeptically look at the email addresses that they're sent from. If they aren't recognizable to you from a sort of legitimate URL, a legitimate email ending, the .com or the .co.uk, don't click on any of the links there, and just be aware that there are people out there causing mischief.
There's another, and thank you for that. That's very helpful. There was another point that Joanne wanted to ask you about. She says we're being encouraged to get rid of old devices, i.e. phones, but how do we access and keep or transfer, then scrub copies of phone text messages and photographs on redundant devices, particularly ones that we may have forgotten passwords to? And she puts ... guilty. This can happen to all of us, can't we? We've got a phone that we've had for a while. We can't quite remember what the password was. Is it just dead to us forever?
Not necessarily. So there are ways that both Google, which runs the Android operating system, so if you have anything other than an Apple smartphone, if you have a non-smartphone, then things are very, very different. But if you have an Apple smartphone, then Apple deals with this. If you have a non-Apple smartphone, generally you will come under Google's auspices. Both of those companies, Apple and Google, have instigated in recent years measures where if you log on to your new device, say you get a new phone or whatever, you log on to that new device with the same account that you have had for the old device, they will automatically transfer over things like contacts, email addresses, and sometimes, particularly with Apple, text message histories. Now, you can do the same thing with WhatsApp. If you are more of a WhatsApp person than you are a text message person, you can transfer over your messages that way. In terms of getting rid of those things that are on your old devices securely, the best way to do that, and you don't need a password for this, is to factory reset the phone. So go into the settings section of your phone. It's the same whether you have an Apple or an Android phone. And then go into generally the general section and press the button that says factory reset. But be warned, once you do that, you are resetting the phone to the same state that it was in when you bought it, which means it is wiped entirely clean. Now, people can still access it if they want to work very hard at it, but actually that is good enough mostly for most people.
Okay, that's such sensible advice, because we're so encouraged, aren't we, to trade in devices at the moment. And actually, one of the things that has prevented me, and I'm such an average consumer, so I think I'll probably speak for a lot of people here, is the fact that I haven't really trusted whatever organisation it is that I'm trading into, because I have thought exactly that. They're going to have all my stuff, and it's as simple as a factory reset, Jane.
Which
Did
you
you
can do
know?
in the comfort of your own home.
Have you done factory reset?
No.
Right. Well, welcome to centrist granny territory. Let's talk about some other things, Chris. And thank you. And any questions that our listeners have, just bung them to us and we will bung us to Chris. There's nothing he doesn't know about. Tell us about OpenAI releasing a new social app for sharing AI videos. Should we be a little bit wary about this? Do we need more AI slop in our lives?
We do not, and we should be very wary of this, Fee. I am really quite concerned about this. So OpenAI, obviously the makers of ChatGPT, have released a new app, which they're calling Sora. It is only currently available in the United States. I've tried to get onto it from where we are, not currently accessible. But basically, when you open it, you are thrown into a sort of TikTok style feed of AI generated videos. And importantly, OpenAI is making a big deal of the fact that you can create videos using your own image or other people's images. So some of the videos that have been going viral in the early days of the app are images of Sam Altman, videos of him basically being put into odd situations. Sam Altman is obviously the CEO of OpenAI. So one of the most viral images on the app in the early days of it is him stealing GPUs, computer chips that are useful for AI systems on a CCTV camera.
I tell you what, you tech guys have fun, don't you?
Yeah, well, quite. I know. Well, I don't really. He really enjoyed it, and I thought, well, get a bit of a life. But anyway, that is by the by. The worrying thing is that these are really, really lifelike, and that is the concern that we have. Is increasingly you cannot see what you believe. OpenAI, by the way, not the only company to do this. In the last week, Meta has opened another app, which is very similar, which is called Vibes, where you can have only AI-generated video as well. So this is unfortunately the new reality in which we live, which is it's not really real at all.
And what is being done to protect public figures or private individuals whose image might be taken and used on exactly these kind of apps to make them appear to be doing all kinds of things?
Well, it might not surprise you, to learn that absolutely nothing is being done in the OpenAI situation. In fact, they're actually saying that you need to opt out rather than opt in to this sort of thing. So you are currently fair game. I imagine that will not last very long, not least because I have seen instances of videos of Taylor Swift being deepfaked using this AI tool, and also images of Mario, the Super Mario video game character. And one thing that I know very well is that Nintendo, the company that runs the Super Mario franchise, are very, very protective of their intellectual property. So I imagine all the fun and games that people are having beyond making silly images and videos of Sam Altman going into kind of Mario territory will soon stop when the lawyers call.
Sure. I did read that Sora is saying that these images will be watermarked, which means that we would be able to identify them as being AI. I mean, do you know much about that? Is that going to happen?
Yeah, so they are watermarked, but one of the challenges that we have is that often these things get stripped of their context. And several years ago, a couple of years ago, I spoke to a guy called Pablo Xavier, who was the creator of the famous Balenciaga Pope images, Pope Francis seen in a puffer jacket, which was kind of the earliest example, I suppose, of AI-generated imagery fooling the world. Now, that guy, he was a Chicago laborer who just did it for a bit of fun and posted it to the internet, admitting that it was AI generated. But the problem with these things is you can very easily get rid of these watermarks, and suddenly, once you do that and they get shared around the internet, shorn of that context, people just don't understand what is going on. So watermarks are all well and good, but if they're not indelible, then frankly, you can just cut them out or move them on.
Yeah. I'm sorry we don't have time for more, Chris, because it's always fascinating talking to you. Thank you very much indeed for that. That sounds like a disaster, Jane. I'm going to say that in my very best Mary Whitehouse voice. But imagine you can just put somebody into this app and create any image that you like surrounding them. What could possibly go right?
Well, indeed.
With that?
God, sometimes you wonder where in the world we look for positivity.